things just took a dark turn after Tesla's major factories went into partial lockdown. And no, this time it's not because of a virus. It's because the workers, the very people building Elon Musk's billion-dollar vision, have finally had enough. Leaked footage shows bodies breaking down, injuries being ignored, and conditions so dangerous they wouldn't pass inspection in any average workplace. They are literally treating their employees like extensions of the machines they build. Disposable, replaceable, invisible. And now that the workers have spoken, believe me, it won't be long before this hits every major headline in the country, because Tesla is now facing one of its most intense internal rebellions to date as multiple Gigafactories across the US and Europe grind to a halt under the weight of organized worker walkouts. The protests erupted simultaneously in Fremont, California, Austin, Texas, and Berlin, Germany, forcing partial lockdowns and halting production across 3 of the company's most valuable sites. This time, workers didn't walk out because they were tired. They walked out because staying in meant disappearing in silence. Employees are calling it a breaking point, citing relentless pressure, unsafe conditions, and deliberate neglect of workplace safety laws. Videos posted from inside these plants show workers abandoning active assembly lines and forming human barricades at loading docks to prevent trucks from leaving the site. If Tesla can't keep its workers safe, how can it keep the public safe with its machines? But let's get one thing clear. This isn't about a few upset employees. This is coordinated. This is boiling rage. And it didn't start last week. The spark? A leaked video from inside Giga, Texas showing 2 workers collapsed on the floor, barely able to stand after a reported 16-hour shift. The footage, which spread across Reddit and TikTok in less than 12 hours, revealed massive ventilation failures, workers operating without masks or eye protection, and supervisors pushing teams to push through the discomfort. And here's what your feed probably didn't show you, but the video was flagged by Tesla's own internal moderation tool before employees leaked it outside, meaning yes, they saw it. They just didn't want you to. Over the past 3 months alone, internal reports, now leaked, document a disturbing pattern of injuries inside Tesla's most automated production zones. These aren't isolated slip and falls. These are electrocution burns, chemical inhalation incidents, and machine entrapment cases. One worker reportedly suffered nerve damage after being pulled into a hydraulic press during a sensor malfunction. Dozens of these injuries never made it to federal logs because of Tesla's use of internal clinics that resolve issues quietly. So what does it say when the most advanced factory floor in the world can't stop crushing the very people building it? And when workers tried to speak up, they were met with threats. OSHA filings obtained by an independent watchdog show that employees were warned not to contact outside agencies. One report even mentions a shift manager telling an injured worker, "If you talk to HR about this, I hope you like filling out unemployment." It's not an isolated attitude, it's a systemic one. Think about that. A company known for disrupting industries has allegedly figured out how to disrupt accountability itself. To make matters worse, as videos of the protests spread online, Tesla security teams were deployed to factory gates to block reporters, drone operators, and even union observers from approaching the scene. Several clips show physical barriers being erected just hours after the protests began, as if media coverage was more dangerous than the collapsing labor force. Local law enforcement confirmed that Tesla filed private trespass complaints against journalists within 48 hours of the first protests. When the message is this clear, protect the brand, not the workers, what else is being locked behind those factory doors? Elon Musk has remained completely silent on the issue despite the uproar spreading across social media. Not one tweet, not one public appearance, not even a meme. Internally, an emergency memo leaked from Tesla's executive Slack channel told managers to minimize optics disruption and stabilize line visibility, which whistleblowers say is code for "don't let the public know how bad this really is." And yet the irony is staggering. A company obsessed with transparency through data refuses to be transparent about people. Labor groups are now mobilizing fast. The United Auto Workers Union and European labor boards have begun investigating conditions inside the plants. Independent safety experts have been denied access to inspection logs, and investors are starting to whisper what no one wanted to say out loud: that Tesla's greatest weakness isn't its competition, it's its workforce, and the fact that it's now turning on them. Because once the people building your empire decide they've had enough, no machine on Earth can put it back together again. And as the dust settles from from the factory walkouts, an even darker reality begins to take shape beneath the headlines. According to leaked HR manuals and legal contracts, workers across Tesla's Gigafactories are routinely bound by strict gag orders that threaten legal action if they speak publicly about conditions inside the plant. These aren't trade secret NDAs, these are speech silencers, and if you're heard on the floor, you don't go to the press. You go to a back room with a settlement offer and a document that ensures your story never leaves the building. What kind of company silences injury victims and buries evidence of its own broken systems? And here's what's worse. The gag orders don't kick in after the injury. They're baked into onboarding. New hires sign silence before they even touch a wrench. Multiple former employees now confirm they were coached on how to describe injuries using non-liability language, even in internal reports. One technician who suffered a crushed finger from a robotic arm was told to write that he misaligned the tool despite 3 witnesses watching the machine glitch mid-cycle. He was paid a small settlement and immediately handed an NDA. His name never appeared in external filings. His accident was labeled as non-reportable. If that sounds suspiciously efficient, that's because it is. Tesla isn't solving injuries, it's just rebranding them. HR insiders are now stepping forward, many anonymously, revealing how Tesla routes most complaints through an internal app. One specifically designed to redirect, bury, or erase reports that include red flag words like toxic, burn, hazard, or machine failure. The app's backend uses keyword filters that classify reports as non-urgent or training level if certain phrases appear. In other words, a system meant to protect employees is being used to hide the risks they face. So how many injuries were lost in translation? Not because they weren't reported, but because they were digitally erased before anyone could read them. One whistleblower provided a breakdown. Over 60 complaints filed in a single month were labeled invalid because the app auto-filtered the language used to describe machine malfunctions. Another report stated, system shutdown triggered by smoke from battery panel, and it was classified as non-actionable. Workers say they stopped using the app altogether because they knew the reports were going nowhere. It's not a safety system, one former engineer said. It's a liability firewall. The system was never broken. It was just built to work against the people using it. Legal analysts now believe Tesla's internal practices may cross into outright illegality. Federal whistleblower protection laws prohibit retaliation or silencing efforts when safety violations are involved. Yet dozens of employees say they were threatened, sidelined, or terminated after trying to raise concerns. One attorney working with former Tesla staff said, "This isn't just corporate secrecy, this is willful suppression of legal rights." But when a trillion-dollar company bends the law to silence broken workers, what does that say about the law itself? Former safety auditors describe it as presentation theater. Real injuries are reclassified, timelines are shifted, photos go missing, all to protect the image that Tesla has everything under control. Quarterly reports internally presented to leadership differ from OSHA submissions. One auditor admitted that logs were scrubbed before investor calls, with full knowledge from senior safety leads. "We weren't reporting," they said, "we were curating." This isn't just unethical, it's industrial gaslighting. Workers who finally dared to speak out say the consequences were swift. Private legal threats, blacklisting from recruiters, and in some cases, smear campaigns launched by Tesla-aligned bots on social media. In internal chats, terms like noise control were used to describe injured employees who were starting to cause visibility. One woman who tore ligaments in her back was labeled a problem case in executive emails after she sought legal counsel. How many more people were branded as liabilities simply because they refused to be statistics? Despite everything, the company continues to market itself as a trailblazer in safety, productivity, and ethics. Musk touts Tesla's world-class engineering, while workers suffer permanent damage inside factories that sound more like controlled environments for silence than innovation. The videos coming out now of injured staff, silenced voices, and ignored cries for help are finally exposing the truth behind the steel and glass. Moreover, I'm pretty sure, like everything else, you might haven't heard about this disaster. So, in March of this year, a dangerous chemical incident occurred on the Cybertruck production line at Tesla's Giga, Texas facility. But unless you worked inside that building, you likely never heard a word about it. During a coolant system failure on one of the vehicle's prototype test rigs, sulfuric acid vapors were released into the air, exposing nearby workers to highly corrosive fumes. 14 employees were affected, 3 were hospitalized, 2 are still undergoing respiratory treatment weeks later. Yet, despite the severity, Tesla didn't report the the incident publicly. Now think yourself, when even acid leaks are hidden from the public, how deep does this cover-up really go? And before you think this was an honest mistake, don't. Internal documents show leadership was briefed within an hour of the leak and still chose silence. The leak was anything but minor. Multiple areas of the production floor were evacuated due to thick fumes. Staff members were seen coughing, collapsing, and vomiting into masks, according to first-hand accounts. But instead of calling hazmat or medical teams from the outside, Tesla allegedly ordered the building ventilated using industrial fans and told workers to return to task once the air cleared. By the next shift, operations resumed as if nothing had happened. Managers were instructed to refer to it as a controlled test that went slightly off protocol. Slightly off protocol? Workers were literally choking on acid, and that's the phrase Tesla chose to roll with. Leaked safety logs reveal the true extent of the damage. The coolant system hadn't been inspected in over 90 days, despite a previous report flagging potential corrosion buildup around its containment valves. A junior engineer reportedly raised concerns about system instability 2 weeks prior to the leak, but was told, "We'll review it in Q3. That Q3 review never came. The leak did. So what do you call it when safety warnings are shelved and the workers suffer instead? Routine or reckless neglect? And perhaps most disturbingly, OSHA wasn't even notified. The Federal Safety Agency only found out about the incident after an anonymous tip was filed from a burner email account 3 weeks after the exposure. By the time inspectors arrived, the contaminated zone had been scrubbed, repainted, and reclassified as a restricted storage area. No samples were collected, no violations were recorded. To this day, there has been no public fine. Now pause and think about that. Acid vapor sent people to the hospital, and Tesla walked away with a clean sheet. Medical records obtained through employee family members show 2 of the hospitalized workers have developed long-term pulmonary complications. One technician, just 27 years old, now requires an oxygen device during sleep. Another has been advised to avoid any future industrial exposure due to permanent lung sensitivity. Neither received formal acknowledgement from Tesla. According to insiders, one was told not to return to work and was offered severance, conditional on signing a non-disclosure agreement. Because in Tesla's system, treating the damage isn't nearly as important as covering up who caused it. Inside Tesla's own safety teams, the incident is being discussed under a label known as Class Red Event, an internal category typically reserved for high-risk, reputation-threatening events that must be contained at all costs. Emails marked Class Red from June 9th show executives discussing external visibility risk and proposing the narrative of a non-lethal system stress test. That was the talking point issued to internal comms teams and quietly handed down to supervisors. That's not a cleanup. That's an instruction manual for rewriting reality. Labor advocates argue this kind of response violates the fundamental principles of worker protection. There's a legal obligation to report toxic exposure incidents, not spin them, said one OSHA consultant. The system only works when companies tell the truth. But Tesla has repeatedly proven that its PR strategy comes first, even if its own people are coughing up blood behind factory walls. How many more Class Red events are sitting in Tesla's archives waiting to be leaked instead of addressed? The acid spill wasn't just a one-off mistake. It was a window, a rare, unfiltered look into how Tesla handles disaster when no one's supposed to be watching. No external hazmat response, no employee alerts, just a scrubbed floor and a buried truth. It may have only taken 40 minutes for the fumes to clear, but it's going to take far longer for this to be forgotten, especially by the workers who lived through it. Because when the only thing more corrosive than the chemicals is the company's silence, something is fundamentally broken. And for years, Tesla has promoted itself as a paragon of modern engineering. Efficient, innovative, and most of all, safe. But leaked internal spreadsheets from Gigafactory Nevada and Giga Texas just blew that illusion wide open. The documents, pulled directly from Tesla's own injury tracking system, reveal a staggering rise in reported workplace injuries over the last 12 months. Injuries that never made it into public filings or investor reports. These aren't minor paper cuts. We're talking about crushed wrists from robotic arm malfunctions, electric shocks, and spinal damage from overexertion and unsafe stations. What happens when the injury report says 0, but workers are limping home every night? And here's the kicker. Tesla did track them. They just didn't tell anyone else. Cross-reference harnessed with medical logs from Tesla's on-site clinics, the leaked injury data reveals something even more disturbing. Dozens of injuries that were either treated informally or not at all. One worker with a second-degree burn was allegedly given over-the-counter ointment and told not to file a report to keep the shift clean. Another with signs of nerve damage was instructed to ice it on break. These clinics are run by third-party contractors, companies incentivized to resolve problems without triggering external accountability. Imagine getting electrocuted on a factory floor and being told to drink water and stretch. That's the level of care we're talking about. A former safety auditor at Giga, Texas has now come forward, confirming what many suspected. Tesla's internal injury logs were cleaned up before quarterly reporting. According to their testimony, real injury data was reviewed in private, then filtered for anything that could damage the company's safety record before being sent up to executive leadership or compliance teams. In one case, 10 injuries in a 2-week span were whittled down to just one for the quarterly summary, labeled minor laceration. When internal audits become editing sessions, you're not reporting reality and you're scripting a performance. And it wasn't just passive omission. Sources claim Tesla used direct injury management language to manipulate data. For example, a fractured wrist from a robotic malfunction was downgraded to a repetitive stress complaint. Why? Because the former wouldn't pass compliance. The latter could be explained away as poor ergonomic form. Every word was chosen not for accuracy, but for liability shielding. This is not a glitch in the system. This is the system itself. Industry watchdogs have responded fiercely. Several have now publicly accused Tesla of falsifying injury statistics in order to protect stock performance and deflect investor scrutiny. Under SEC regulations, companies are required to disclose material risks, including workplace hazards that could affect valuation. But when injuries vanish before they reach those reports, investors are fed a sanitized illusion. Labor groups are already calling for a full federal investigation into Tesla's reporting history, and legal analysts warn that if proven, this could escalate into a securities fraud case, not just a labor scandal. What does it say about a company when a broken spine is considered less threatening than a stock dip? Inside the factories, the human toll is mounting. Interviews with current employees describe a culture where pain is normalized and speaking up is punished. If you can still walk, you work, said one assembler. Multiple workers admitted to hiding injuries just to avoid being labeled fragile or a problem case. The pressure to meet quotas and avoid triggering safety reviews has turned Tesla's floors into performance stages, and the workers into actors pretending not to hurt. And if you think that sounds dramatic, ask yourself, why does the truth need to be hidden at all? While Musk tweets about space exploration and AI consciousness, the reality back on Earth is far less glamorous. The people building his empire are being injured, ignored, and erased from the very reports that claim to protect them. Tesla continues to advertise cutting-edge safety systems in its vehicles, but what about the systems protecting the people who build them? Because when injury becomes invisible, pain becomes policy. And that's not innovation, that's exploitation dressed in metrics. The story that was supposed to stay buried just surfaced, and it's one Tesla can't meme its way out of. New reports confirm that underage teens were placed on Cybertruck assembly lines through third-party contractors to meet looming production deadlines. Now, just think, God forbid, if they were your children. 3 minors, some as young as 16, were assigned to high-risk areas, handling machinery, chemicals, and heavy parts that federal labor law explicitly forbids them from touching. This wasn't a clerical error. It was a systemic decision to fill labor shortages by any means necessary, even if it meant violating the law. When a trillion-dollar tech empire needs children to hit deadlines, how far has it really fallen? One 17-year-old suffered a severe crush injury while working on a molding station. According to leaked messages, his supervisor allegedly told him to keep quiet about your age during medical intake. Hospital staff were not informed he was a minor. He was discharged with permanent hand damage, and no official injury report was ever filed under his real name. He disappeared from Tesla's system, but not from the trauma he now lives with. This wasn't a manufacturing error. This was the manufacture of silence. The boy was hired through a staffing agency Tesla has since stopped working with, but only after the media got involved. 2 other parents have come forward anonymously, confirming their teenage children were also injured on Tesla floors and asked to lie about their roles. One mother found out her son had been working 10-hour overnight shifts shifts only after he came home with a wrapped wrist and refused to speak. Tesla's internal team has made no public apology, and no executive has acknowledged the scandal. So when exactly did disruption become a license to destroy lives before they've even started? Labor watchdogs have slammed the company for what they call a deliberate evasion of legal boundaries. Under US federal law, miners are strictly prohibited from working in hazardous industrial environments, including around conveyor belts, high voltage areas, and chemical handling zones, all of which these teens were exposed to. Legal experts say these violations are not just unethical, but criminal, and the Department of Labor has already launched a preliminary inquiry. Still, Tesla remains publicly silent, bearing statements, cutting ties with recruiters, and hoping the news cycle moves on. But this time, it won't, because we're not talking about missed deadlines. We're talking about children crushed under them. Behind the scenes, sources say factory managers were under immense pressure to meet Cybertruck quotas following multiple launch delays and shareholder anxieties. Shift leads were told, "Do what you need to do to keep the line moving." That phrase, repeated in at least 3 internal memos, has now become the center of a legal firestorm. Lawyers argue it directly implicates management in creating unsafe conditions and prioritizing output over legal compliance. The teens weren't mistakenly hired. They were used because they were cheap, fast, and expendable. How many more broken hands and gagged parents does it take before innovation starts looking like exploitation? And yet, Musk has said nothing. Not a tweet, not a post, not a word. A man who has commented on everything from cryptocurrency to cage fights now remains silent while underage labor allegations explode around his company. Meanwhile, Tesla's PR team quietly ended contracts with 2 of the staffing firms involved, but made no acknowledgement of why. The move reeks of containment, not correction. You don't cut ties with recruiters unless those ties were already choking someone. And do you know, after months of silence, the federal government has officially stepped in? Yes, the US Department of Labor has launched a multi-site audit into Tesla's factory operations, focusing specifically on safety violations, toxic exposures, and internal suppression of worker injury data. The audit will span Tesla's key sites in Nevada, Texas, and California, with regulators planning to inspect everything from production logs to medical reports to HR complaint trails. On paper, it's a routine compliance review, but behind closed doors, officials are calling this a high-priority probe. And the reason is simple: the evidence pouring in is no longer circumstantial. Because when your factory floor starts looking like a crime scene, it's no longer a matter of policy, it's a matter of prosecution. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill are already raising questions. Multiple members of Congress have submitted formal inquiries demanding to know why so many injuries, chemical spills, and underage labor cases were allowed to go unreported for so long. Senator Terrence Holt, who sits on the Labor Oversight Committee, stated bluntly, "This is looking less like negligence and more like willful concealment." And if that's the case, Tesla isn't just facing fines, it's facing the full weight of federal enforcement. So when exactly did failing to report start looking like a business strategy? And here's what really breaks the silence. OSHA itself has whistleblowers now. Yes, the very agency that's supposed to regulate Tesla's safety standards has insiders leaking claims that Tesla has received soft warnings and internal nudges for years, but never paid a price. One of those insiders says field agents were discouraged from citing Tesla publicly due to the company's sensitive investor reputation. Think about that. The system meant to protect workers allegedly gave Tesla a free pass. To protect stockholders, you can't claim to be neutral when your silence is protecting a billionaire. Legal analysts now say the scope of the audit has changed. This isn't just about missing reports or sloppy safety practices. If investigators can prove that Tesla intentionally suppressed injury data, they'll move into criminal liability territory. That means felony charges, that means subpoenas, that means boardroom panic, and this time, it's not just theoretical. The class action lawsuit already being filed by former Tesla employees has named Elon Musk directly. No longer the man behind the curtain. Now he's the man on the paperwork. The lawsuit accuses Musk of knowingly fostering an unsafe work culture, ignoring documented injury trends, and creating a top-down pressure system that forced supervisors to bury complaints to meet deadlines. Dozens of testimonies are being collected from workers who say they were silenced, threatened, or blacklisted for reporting basic safety issues. One claim even alleges that a floor supervisor received a bonus for reducing injury reporting incidents. Not injuries themselves, just the paperwork. If reducing a body count means scrubbing a spreadsheet instead of saving a life. That's not management, that's malpractice. Tesla's official response? Silence. A short, vague press statement referencing its ongoing commitment to safety and transparency. But behind the scenes, the company has begun scrubbing internal Slack channels, combing through HR databases, and instructing the team leads to minimize optics disruption. One leaked memo told managers to use discretion with language around compliance. And if that doesn't sound like a company preparing for indictment, what does? Public trust is already cracking. For years, Musk built an empire on disruption, speed, and promise. But this time, that speed may have outrun accountability. With the federal government finally circling and lawsuits stacking at the door, the brand that sold innovation may soon be forced to defend complicity. It began as a handful of frustrated workers standing outside Tesla's Fremont headquarters. Now it's a movement. Protesters are flooding the gates with one chilling chant: "We build your future, you broke our bodies." And the world is starting to listen. Their signs are no longer just cardboard and marker. They're testimonials. Their voices are no longer anonymous. They're viral. Across TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube, videos of injured Tesla employees telling their stories are spreading fast and hitting nerves far beyond factory walls. When hashtags start doing the job your HR department refused to, that's not just momentum, that's a reckoning. One video, viewed over 4 million times in 24 hours, shows a former battery technician pulling off his wrist brace while recounting how he was pressured to finish a shift with a fractured hand. Another shows a woman sobbing as she reads the NDA Tesla asked her son to sign after suffering a back injury at 17. These stories are not just generating sympathy, they're changing public perception. Tesla's branding as a futuristic utopia is being shattered by the people who were told to stay silent and now refuse to. This isn't a PR crisis, it's a cultural collapse leaking out from inside the factory walls. And for the first time, the people shouting outside aren't being ignored, because now the money is listening too. So the real question isn't whether Tesla can survive the backlash, it's whether the world will ever trust it again.